Hey, everybody. While I'm waiting for Graham to join us for our event tonight, I thought I would just take a minute because we're having some glitches, some technical glitches. What a shock. I feel like all of these things happen only to me, yet I know that many of you out there also experience the same. Um, One of the interesting things that has happened is that we now have a new transition planning IEP form. And I wanted to let you know that I have scheduled an event in 2 weeks to come together and review the form, talk about the form, and hopefully get the best that we can out of it. It's an expanded form and it is pretty cool, but not perfect. I think it goes a long way towards accomplishing some of the intent of the original transition planning form. So I would love to know what all of you think. Please join me. Let's have a raucous conversation about IEP forms and how we can just basically develop this contract, because this transition planning form is a contract with your school district to provide certain services to prepare your young person for adulting. And we really need to hold their feet to the fire on this stuff. Okay, so I'm waiting for Graham and I will be right with you. Graham, how are you?
Oh, sorry.
I just turned the recording back on. I am so sorry about the glitches and stuff, but so is life, right?
No, I think that's probably my fault, actually. So don't apologise, please. I should have checked the links earlier. And I knew that there was a change of meeting. I just seem to have lost it somehow.
That's okay. It actually took me a minute to get in through the new format that we have in Mighty Network. So it didn't like me going in directly from Zoom. So I had to sign in from Mighty Network. So it took me a couple minutes to do that anyway. So welcome, welcome. I don't know if we're going to have other people joining us on the live, but I'm excited to be doing this with you in this format. And after the interview is over, I will not only get it prepared to post up to our podcast, but it will go out in the raw form to the network as well.
Right, wonderful, good.
Okay, so we have one other person joining us. It's Cheryl Farley. Great, welcome. Okay, so Graham, I would love for you to introduce yourself. I know you're an author, and that's primarily what we're going to talk about today. You're a dad, and you live in the UK, which is amazing. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet people across the way. And I'm sure you have some other wonderful achievements in your life that I didn't dig into. So why don't you tell me a little bit about, I mean, I read the book, so I know how you got started on this journey, but why don't we tell our audience, how did you get started on this journey of wanting to chronicle what life planning looks like? And then, tell me why you chose the title, What's Possible?
Okay. It's lovely to be here, Annette. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk to your circle. I didn't choose to write the book in that sort of sense. I didn't plan to. I think, like all of us, I'm the father of two wonderful daughters. They're both grown now, so one's 22, one's 24. And when I had the first one, sort of just everything you imagine being a parent to be.
Yeah.
She was wonderful. She smiled all the time. Sort of everybody loved her, and
Yeah.
life was full of optimism, and it was just such a joy. And when our second daughter came along, there was all sorts of complications, and then I sort of probably found out actually this parenting is a little bit harder than just the smiles and the blonde hair and the blue eyes and
Yeah.
all of that sort of stuff. And actually, it's hard work.
Yes. Not for the
So
faint of heart, for sure.
no, not at all. No, 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 no. So we spent the first month in hospital with our second daughter, and it seemed like weeks and months and then years in and out of hospitals with various hospital appointments. But like everybody in your community, life goes on. We still had another daughter. We still had to pay the mortgage, and I've always been in small businesses. So I've run my own businesses over the years, and so I suppose that's one half of my life, and the other half has been a parent. And at the end of the day, my family means a lot to me, as I'm sure it does everybody else's. So I identify as actually a father and a husband, and these other things are a part of life as well.
Yeah. Well, you named your book What's Possible, and it's really a roadmap book, which is great. And it's a book about planning for the future, but also planning for right now, too. And,
Yeah.
you know, my audience knows full well that I love a good plan. So I really could dig into this, and was, really just like the whole thing, shaking my head like, yep, that's it. Right on track. Yes, definitely. Oh, and then I would see some things. I'm like, oh, I hadn't thought of that, and jot down some notes. So it's not light bedtime reading for sure, but it does flow and go very smoothly and easily. But I was really interested in hearing about the title, What's Possible? And, it just evokes this whole idea of where the plan should get started.
Right. Okay. What's possible was probably the opposite of how we started our journey, because in the beginning there was loads of physicians saying what my daughter wouldn't be able to do and what not to expect.
Yeah.
And as she grew a little, she did reach milestones, but always a bit later. So sometimes there's lots of negativity, and sometimes you just have to
Yeah.
be positive and ask, actually, what's possible? What can my son or daughter do? And if we don't imagine this as parents, and then how can our children if we don't believe in them first and foremost? So,
It's so true. We definitely start out their lives with, all of the things they can't do and all of the blocks and all of the, stumbling issues, and in order to get services, we have to write down the worst of it, and you just get mired in this negativity, and it's hard
mm,
as a parent not to feel that way, but you imagine that you're absolutely some way or another sharing that with your child. They're feeling all that negativity about themselves, about their condition, and about their abilities. So just flipping that on its behind, it makes a lot of sense. But it's hard to remain positive, isn't it?
it is, and it's exactly as you said, Annette. When you apply for any support of any kind, you have to paint the absolute worst picture in order to get services of any kind. And, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the same the world over. And as you say, it is very hard to sort of think the negative thoughts all the time. And yeah, we've had our down moments, and yes, it has been hard to be positive all the time. But
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes you just have to sort of grab that little bit of hope, with each little milestone or each little thing that you see your child do, each a little bit of growth or maturity or development, or celebrate this little win,
Jump
and
on that. Yeah.
yeah, that's it. Jump on it, and just hold it with both hands, and sort of think actually today's okay, and if we can do
Mm-hmm.
this today, you build on what our children can do tomorrow, and each day that passes, each week, it gets no, easy is the wrong word, because actually, it is hard, and we've all been through this journey in one
Mm-hmm.
way, shape, or form. And for each of us, our journeys are all individual, and so I wouldn't want to ever say it's easy, and we should always have hope, because actually, it doesn't always work that way. But
Right. Right.
yeah,
And
for,
you talk about transition periods, and it can definitely mean transition for a young person. That's kind of where you are in your life right now. But we have so many transitions with, well, any person goes through a lot of transitions in life, but disabled people will hit several transitions along the way throughout their life that are very marked.
mm,
So the planning tool is something that you can go back to over and over again to, really set your intentions, set your goals, and then map your way through it. So you called your planning tool Red Giraffe, which is
Yes.
very cool. I love it. Tell me where the name came from.
Well, my daughter, sometimes you have to always remember your why. And ever
Yeah.
since she was a young girl, red was absolutely her favorite color, always.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever we went to a zoo, every single time we always had to go to the giraffe enclosure. So, we always had to make a beeline to that first of all, otherwise there'd be no peace for the rest of the day. So,
Right.
it made sense that if we were sort of thinking about a plan for us, it would have to
Mm-hmm.
be red giraffe because it's for her. And yeah, and I suppose we started this planning process as we all do as parents, and siblings sometimes, when they're much younger. But at some stage as they grow and they have to be a part of the discussion, which is also
Yes.
important. I mean, my daughter's now 22, but the sort of discussions we can have with her now are, vastly different from, when she was 8, 10, and sort of, her elder sister didn't realize, how her life would go to college and go after and get a job and get mortgage and all of those things. So we
Mm-hmm.
couldn't possibly expect our youngest to imagine these things. So, as you say, we have to. We need a vision sometimes for where the future's going and a plan. So I'm really with you with a plan, Annette.
The plan. The plan is like a warm, comfy blanket that wraps around you and gives you a little bit of control, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
at least it makes you feel like you have some control over the future and over the process.
Mm.
So you broke this out into 4 great paths, and it actually looks like a train map, with several directions going. I grew up in Boston. We have these very funky, train maps. The blue line goes this way and the red line goes this way, and they take little curves and they come back around. And um, so it really sung to me, just the visual of it. And I'm a very visual person. But I thought it was interesting the choices that you made about your 4 paths. And you're using a method that you call vocal to evaluate and do the analysis through each path to get to your end plan result. And so let's talk about that vocal method first, and then we can dig into the 4 paths. If you're not getting it already, audience, I really enjoyed the book and I thought it was very helpful, a very helpful tool. And I recommend definitely buying it, thumbing through it, and putting it on your shelf, because you'll come back to it as you face challenges and opportunities in each of the 4 pathways. So let's talk about vocal.
Right. Okay. Before we begin, we need a vision about where our young person might go, or where they might do. Um, maybe where they might live. After they stop living with you, maybe that might be they may move out of home, in their
Mhm.
20s or 30s, or maybe your vision is actually they'll stay with you and then carry on living in your home. Then we need a vision about how that will work. Um, Once we sort
So
of thought
that's the
about
V,
the
vision.
V, yes,
Vision is
V
the
for
V
vision,
in
yes,
vocal.
yes. I mean, see, if I use a more simple example, say with cooking, we need about a vision about what sort of meals, or for me, how it worked for me is we needed a vision about what sort of meals our daughter might cook if she were living alone. And then we
Mm-hmm.
had to think about, well, how is she going to, once we have the vision about what she's going to cook and what things
Right.
she likes, we then need to think about how she's going to cook it. So we need to decide what options will work. And for my daughter lacks a lot of upper body strength, so she loves pasta, but lifting heavy pans of pasta and draining them isn't going to
Not going to
work for
work.
her. so,
Mm-hmm.
but then it's all sorts of other things. I mean, if you want, I can't take you around our kitchen, but our kitchen we don't have an oven and we don't have a cooktop just because these are not things that she's going to use. So
Right.
we have an air fryer because that's an option that works for her, along with
Mm-hmm.
a microwave that works for her, and a slow cooker. These are options that work for her.
So that's
Um,
the O, options. We're
the
going to
O,
follow this and track it all the way through. And I
okay,
love that because just today I'm reviewing guardianship pleadings for a person, and we're looking at the evaluations, and we're talking about cooking and what can this person do and what can't they do and what do they need help and support with. It may seem like a small thing, but it's such a big thing. Being able to, plan and prepare your meals. Like food is life. So that's options. So then the C, what's the C?
You see, the C, once we have narrowed down our options, we need to create a plan on how, say with cooking, how my daughter would learn how to cook. So we need to plan how she's going to do it. So this is creating the plan and the actual teaching, if you like, or showing or instructing, with cooking, about how she can, it's the teaching, it's the learning, really. It's which, we'll probably go into this a bit later, but obviously there's learning,
Right.
repetition and practice, but that's a different thing.
Oh, and Graham, you'll be surprised how fast, 40 minutes goes by in these interviews, by the way. Especially because I can talk some, as my folks know. So assess. That's where you are coming in and you're taking a look at what you're doing and accomplishing, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's assessing how the plan's working, and at some point, some plans, they just need a little bit more time because our young people might just need a little bit extra time to actually learn and repeat it and consolidate it so it really embeds. But, other things, actually, sometimes the plan doesn't work, and maybe we need to go back and look at the options and see whether there's another option that can make the plan work. Or we may need to go right back to the very beginning and think, well, actually, this is not working. We need a better vision or a new vision, and then
but you've learned so much.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what struck me. You've learned so much by going through the process. The last one, the L, that is something that I had never really considered before, or maybe I had, but not really in that way. So tell us about legacy.
Legacy, yes. I mean, people think of legacy often in terms of money and finances, but actually legacy is actually the beliefs and values that we instill in our children. There's also people in your community who leave a legacy of making something better, or I probably can't think of an example right now, but it's the old proverb, give someone a fish, you feed them for the day, teach them how to fish, and you feed them for a lifetime. So legacy is for each thing, like cooking. The legacy is the ability that my daughter would have to cook. That's one little bit of a legacy, and another little bit of a legacy might be how money, or it might be having a good attitude so that she can get a job, a paid work, and retain that employment. These are all little bits of legacy that added together actually form more of a legacy than just money alone. It's what we leave them with. That's our values, our family values and beliefs.
Creating a life. Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to think about that vocal method as we go through the 4 paths. And they are purpose, relationships, daily living, and financial. Purpose. So good to talk about purpose with our people, right? We get so stuck in the day-to-day and the data collection and the this and the that, and it really can be daunting to step back and look at the big picture, which is the purpose. And I love that you say that our people we have to have a presumption of purpose for everybody, because I think we don't always do that. And especially once they get in the system, the adult service system. So where did you think about that presumption of purpose?
Well, how do when my daughter was younger, she went to an ordinary mainstream school, and that worked okay for a while. And then in the end, she has developmental language delay disorder. So she ended up going to a speech and language school. And we got quite comfortable there. Actually, it was a very good school. She was receiving lots of therapy, and she was making progress. But as we sort of neared the end of high school, we realised actually this wasn't really leading to a job, and or some sort of paid employment. And
Mhm.
we all know about this. We all sort of think of things as the cliff edge, and it is quite apt that once you go through college, at the end of college, there is a cliff edge, and it's 22, isn't it, or 21? It's that sort of abrupt cutoff,
Mhm.
and we've always wanted our daughter to have a fulfilling and rewarding life, and sort of sitting at home watching a screen all day wasn't how we envisaged her future. So
Mhm.
we thought actually this is one of the fundamental things, because once you have a purpose to your day, you have to go out and engage with the world, whether that's catch public transport or speak to colleagues. Even if it's not a service role, you still end up speaking to somebody as you get instructions. And the other thing is, once you have a purpose to your day, you know, is something to talk about. So if you have relatives over, they ask you inevitably, "What are you doing?" So you have something
Mhm.
to talk about. We wanted our daughter. She has a part-time job now, so we're pleased that we've come out at the other end. She does have paid work, and she does identify as a hospitality worker. She thinks of herself as a food and beverage assistant,
Mm.
and it's lovely hearing her talk about that. And she's got pride in herself, and that for us is very important. And all the lines are important, all four lines, but that kind of often is the key one, because once you have a purpose, you then have an income, which obviously contributes to the financial line. You have to deal with people, which obviously interrelates with relationships. And often when you go to work, you take daily living skills from home into the workplace. Even if it's just making coffee because some or whatever. Not that our children only make coffee, but that's just a small example. Or clear up after a customer. In my daughter's case, in her hotel. So you know,
Mhm.
we always thought that purpose was very central, but and I suppose we sleepwalked into it until my daughter was about 15. So she goes to school. I'm sure the system, regardless of state, the system's fairly similar, isn't it? You go to school, and you go to high school, and then you go to college. Somewhere along the line, you get work experience.
Or a transition program,
Oh yeah,
depends
okay,
on people's
yeah.
path, but yeah.
Yeah. I was just about to mention supported internships, project search.
Mhm.
I'm a big fan of that, because our daughter went on a supported internship, and that has led her to her job. So yes, thrilled by that.
Fantastic. I loved the employment story that you had in there about Marshall. I know it's a little bit of a composite of
Yeah,
people that you've encountered, but it was really important to note that his first trial out at work did not go as planned, which happens all the time,
yeah,
happens to our, non-disabled children as well. Um, Actually, that reminds me, you in England, you say additional needs, a person with additional needs. We
yes, we
say
do.
special needs or disability. So just wanted to note that language difference there. So Marshall's story was really cool because he trialed at a small cafe and decided that he didn't like serving people, a
Yes,
part of his job that was very important. And because it was a small place, they couldn't allow him to only do one part of the job. So he lost that job. And then he had to regroup with his team. And
Mm.
then and then what happens?
Uh, well, he found another program, in a larger establishment. Some, there's a lot. My daughter's not like this. My daughter is, she does like a chat, but other people, you know, often people find it. Our children find it very difficult interacting with other people, and find relationships, especially, difficult. Well, my daughter does. I'm not pretending that she doesn't, but
Right.
she doesn't always read the nuances in what's happening in the conversation.
Hmm.
And so, lots of people that I've met prefer not to be customer facing. And my daughter is able to do that. So, or not even, yeah, so she likes to. She does like to meet people, even though she struggles sometimes to get her words out and express her thoughts clearly. So
Okay.
yeah, I suppose because we were on a supported internship and we realised that actually not they don't always end up as they're meant to be, but it's actually
Hmm.
a case again, still just holding hope and thinking actually this one hasn't worked. Let's still hold on to the belief that actually they will get a job, because if we don't believe in our children, then who else will? So it's very
But
important to put that story there as well.
that's, the whole point of your book is that it's not like one and done. You do a plan and then you're done, and we just like follow it and we're all set. They when Marshall's parents sat down with him to talk to him about his failure, they turned it into a positive learning experience. Well, let's regroup, let's think about the things that did go well, and let's, focus on that, and then take that into the next setting with us. And fortunately for Marshall, he had good support with his team and his
Yeah, yeah.
program. That doesn't always happen.
No.
Sometimes the family has to be the advocate and kind of push back and say, well, Marshall really enjoyed being in the kitchen. He just didn't like coming out to the register. So
Yeah.
let's find something that incorporates that 50% of the job that he really enjoyed. And that sometimes families and um, support teams, they just want to rush into the next thing. Well, okay, that didn't work, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to have him, like, taking out trash at the hospital or whatever. No, let's just take a minute and review what we've learned here. And so that's so important for the plan, right?
Yeah, it is. Yes, yes, exactly.
This is
Yes.
why I love Graham, because he and I are on the same wavelength.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
So,
the vision is actually having a goal that you're aiming to in a broader sense, but then each stop
mhm,
along the line is smaller vision about how that little thing is going to be accomplished. This is very much how are we going to get to the end point where actually our
right.
children have a worthwhile activity of purpose. It doesn't have. I mean, it'd be nice if they're all paid, but the statistics.
Mhm,
We all want employers to employ more of our children, but that doesn't
mhm,
always happen. I know things are changing slowly and for the better, but it's still a long, slow process, and
sure.
lots of employers actually don't always realise what our children are capable of, and what they
Mhm,
can do. When I think about my daughter, one of the things that we were very keen on is, well, if she doesn't have the same skill set as maybe her sister might, she's going to have a good attitude. She's always going to turn up on time.
yeah.
She's going to be ready for work. She's going to be enthusiastic. We impressed upon her that you can't actually play on your phone at work because it doesn't work like that in the real world.
Yeah.
And these are small things, but lots of that employers value these, and these are the skills that we can teach at home by talking to our
Mhm,
children about them. We talk to our daughter all the time. Just have these conversations. Maybe I think I said in the book as well once. We were late for her supported internship. I was driving and we got caught in traffic, and I sort of said, "Hey, you better just apologise when you get there." And she said,
mhm.
"Why? No one else does." And I thought, this is appalling. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the first thing. I mean, she ended up only being 5 minutes late, but the point was, you still sort of say, acknowledge it and say, actually, I should have been here on time. Apologies. And we ended up having this conversation for probably over a week. It took a while for her to actually believe it herself. But then, we are at that point where actually she's always 10 minutes early for work now, just because she's fearful of being
That's
late. And
great.
so, as an employer, her employer loves this.
Yeah.
She's reliable. There's no sort of sick days through other reasons, other than being
Mhm.
sick. So these
These
attitudes.
are lessons that a lot of young people need to learn, non-disabled as well. I mean, I go through this with my 23-year-olds, and it's they are just the things your parents teach you. And it's very normalizing, to think about it that way. So as we were going through the vocal method, the critical spot was to stop and assess the situation and then, revamp.
Yeah.
I'm never going to get through all this if I don't move along. So,
Right.
relationships, great chapter. So many times planning just does not include relationships and socialization. And we're just always thinking about more of the black and white practical things. um so I loved the story about your daughter and her school friends, that
Yeah.
you had to take her out of school when she was 10, so
Um,
um relationships are so important. They really are like the bread of life, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yes, exactly. I mean, we wanted our daughter to have a rewarding and fulfilling life. This is what it comes back to, as you say. Living independently is not a lot of good if she's, acutely lonely. And we
Right.
wanted her to have people in her life, and she doesn't always understand the nuances of relationships, and she finds friendships difficult, like many of our children do.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes there's, in the book, I won't go into it too much, but often there's dynamic relationships which we have with our family and friends, and then there's more static ones. Say if we're going to the dentist, and
Mm-hmm.
we just say our name to the receptionist, and sort of we're here to see doctor whoever, and so we can have scripts to, we can show our young people scripts how to deal with different types of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, loneliness, I think is a silent killer. And my daughter, and I'm sure everybody else's sons and daughters, want people in their life, even if they find relationships awkward. And
Yeah.
so, if we just ignore relationships, they find their company from characters online rather than real people.
Mm-hmm.
And while online is always a part of everyone's life these days, she's I sort of term that as a relationship, in the sense that actually sometimes what people are posting on, Instagram isn't actually their real life. It's just,
Yeah.
the edited highlights reel that actually makes them feel good, and you sort of feel, oh dear, I don't feel so good here. It
Yeah.
needs to be put in context. So, relationships is vitally important, but it's also, if the lines cross over, you have to work with work colleagues. There's things that you
Right.
might tell a friend that you really shouldn't say to a work colleague. There's different
Mm-hmm.
social spaces, and these are long-term sort of conversations that you might have with your son or daughter well into their adult life. And um, we're still doing that with our daughter. She's making lots of progress, but there's still a long way to go for us still.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, next chapter, next section, a biggie, daily living. Whoa,
Yes.
there's so much involved in that.
Yeah, there is, isn't there? Yes. Um, Daily living, we sort of term that as actually the daily living skills. So that might be inside the home, outside the home,
Mhm.
and lots of self-care as well. Because my daughter doesn't want us looking after her, or more her mother, doing things that she should, that she can do by herself.
Mhm.
And so, personal care. It's important, but it's also the things like cooking. Each week I do a little. I cook with my daughter quite a lot. It's mostly her and I that cook in our house, and so.
No.
But these are all simple recipes. Like slow cooker, but cooking's one skill that she needs to be able to do. But there's also things like keeping the house clean. There's also
Mhm.
personal safety, locking the doors at night.
Right.
There's personal, um, self-care. There's also personal organization, which is, email and packing your bag ready for the next day.
Mhm.
They're all individual stops along this line. And then, the final one, probably in some ways the harder one, is travel, because, this might
Oh,
involve,
yes.
not my daughter's not going to drive, but other people might. But for her, it involves taking the bus, so she needs the app, on her phone, and
Yeah.
these are all skills. So these are basically the lines, but it's all right knowing these things sometimes. It's just actually doing them. So
Yeah.
we sort of discovered a book called Tiny Habits, and it's all about sort of modern habit theory, which is
Oh,
having a cue to actually start the habit, and then the routine, which is the doing of the habit, and getting some sort of reward, whether that's a good feeling about actually I'm organised, ready for tomorrow. But there's all
nice.
sorts of things we can do, like alarms on our phones, and we may string two or three habits together. Like alarm goes off our phone at say 7:30. That might mean phones off. It is in our house. Phones off for the evening, and it might mean take medication and
Hmm.
a few other things in it. Maybe load the dishwasher. Yeah.
Prepare for the day, the next
Yes.
day.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but these are the habits. These are the skills that us as parents we teach our young people. When they're sort of 5, 6. Then we get them to you know I don't know, floss their
To,
teeth and these sort of things.
yeah.
And
And then
then
to build on that as they get older, because each thing is a building block for the next thing and the next thing. And our kids are just on a different trajectory, right? I mean,
yeah,
they're on their own path, but it's still a path, and they're still going to the same places that our non-disabled kids are going. Okay, the last one is financial.
yeah.
I don't know if it's just me because, I'm kind of bent this way, but I find this a little bit more straightforward to deal with than some of the other bigger concepts that we've talked about tonight. Um, but how are you thinking? How are you presenting the financial path?
I mean, this is very important to have a vision about how you see your child's finances going in the future. Probably the one of the first questions is: are they going to have a guardianship, or are they going to have a trust, or are they not going to have either of these and manage their money by themselves? I mean, that's probably the first fundamental question. But
Mm-hmm.
I suppose our daughter has a trust, but we still want her to have her own money. So even though we have a trust, that's probably for the things that we might need, the big assets, but we still want her to have control of her finances.
Right.
So we I think one of the things we need to do is, if that's what other people are thinking, you need to separate your finances from your child's. And
Mm-hmm.
how we did that initially was one bank account, which she sort of paid for things at a souvenir shop. But and she goes to the grocery store now because we're cooking. I might sort of deliberately not get ingredients so I can send her. But that's just the
Mm-hmm.
practice of actually the process of spending money, and comparing things like special offers and those sort of things that stores always have. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
I think that just that act of being able to make a list and go to the grocery store and figure out how much money you need. I mean, it may seem like a simple, straightforward thing, but there's a lot of skills that need to be built inside that one financial task. Yeah. I mean,
yes.
again, I've had situations where I've seen my non-disabled daughter struggle with this too. And she, overdraws her bank account regularly. We're still working on that.
Yeah,
Um,
but I think sometimes my daughter doesn't always understand the value of money, but we can teach her the mechanics of how to operate her money. So we
mhm,
have lots of different accounts for different sorts of spending. So she has one for clothes, and one for entertainment, and one for haircuts and stuff, hairdressers
mhm.
and stuff like that. And it's more so that she has little pots and realizes actually that's the money I've got in that pot. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, this sounds a bit me, but sometimes when she goes to the shop, if she spent her entertainment budget, her card will be declined because she spent all of her money, and that's actually a part of the process of actually learning.
Mm-hmm.
Tough love, I know, but she's 22, so you wouldn't do that to a younger child, but
Yeah.
this is a part of the process to try and I suppose demonstrate that there are limits to how much you can spend.
Mm-hmm. And what works for her is not necessarily going to be what works for somebody else. So that's why this vocal method is very important, because you have to individualize it, and it has to be a person-centered plan. That's what we talk about all the time on this podcast. Okay, I could talk for hours about this, Graham, but we are running out of time. So what I'm going to say is that definitely check out the book. It's new. It came out in November, December.
November, yeah.
November. Yep. And you want to go to Graham's website, which is www.whatspossibleplan.com.
Yes.
Graham is also a member in the circle. Thank you. And he is here to answer questions and to chat with you about stuff. And hopefully, Graham, you'll take part in some of our other programs going on. And also, you have a podcast with your wife called Expanding Worlds, right?
That's right. Yes, my wife Deborah is the host of that, and this started years ago, and we've been. It's been very work focused actually, but it's all sorts of things. It's like assistive technology, because Google and Microsoft, they've developed all this tech out there, and often it's us as parents who don't know how to use it well enough.
It's amazing.
It is, yes. There's all sorts of apps for that read things out. So it's your phone would scan and read things out. And yeah, sorry, I'm taking up the time.
I'm gonna close out now and say thank you. I'm going to stop the recording, and then I want to see if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Annette.